Martin, how are you doing?
I'm all right. I'm a bit weary, but I'm fine. So we've got John 14, 1 to 14 this Sunday.
We continue through John, eclectically, not kind of smoothly.
Yes, I mean, it's sort of a bit here, a bit there, isn't it? And this is a passage that is a familiar one for funerals. And a familiar, slightly curiously, really, when you think about it. But it people use it for funerals because of the Jesus saying, "In my Father's house there are many dwelling places." And I always think that, what does that conjure up in people's minds? I mean, in my mind, it conjures up some sort of rambling manor house, and you've got, everybody's got a room, which is a curious sort of fantasy to have, and not particularly appealing. Really.
Sort of Premier Inn in the sky.
That's right.
It's not really an aim of mine.
No. So I'm looking at it a bit more closely. I think one of the things that the questions he first ask is what when he uses this term, "my Father's house," what's he actually talking about? And when we read John, we know that we're looking all the time for what David Ford calls sort of levels of meaning, but we might see as resonances. So how does a word or a phrase resonate either with something else in John or something somewhere else? So, and what might John be intending for people to be making associations with when they hear a phrase, Father's house? So we know a bit that Jesus talks about the temple as his Father's house.
He does, John 2.
And we know that he talks about the temple then being destroyed and being raised again in 3 days, by which we therefore realised that that his Father's house, the temple, is his body. And we know that when we start thinking about Jesus' body, we are actually then talking about a community in the resurrection life. So I think you can quite quickly get to a sense that actually, one might say that his Father's house with many dwelling places is the Christian community, is the church. That may be taking it a step too far, but I think you can do that with all of those resonances, and therefore many dwelling places means that this is an inclusive community. It is a constantly welcoming community. No one is excluded from this. But the other resonance, which you get a little bit later on in the same chapter, in verse 23, is this sense that that this is about love. It's about our love for him. It's about the love of the Son for the Father and the indwelling in that love. So the Father's house and the dwelling places are those places where where we are caught up in the love between the Father and the Son. So, which one could also then say is the church. Which is a rather different image than the Premier Inn in the sky.
Yeah.
And I think trying to working with those sorts of associations produces a much richer sense of what Jesus is, and because he's providing reassurance here to the disciples, and this is the reassurance that if they dwell in him, they will always have a home. And that's the Father's house. So that's one thing I wanted to just reflect on for a moment. The other is the bit later on in the passage. I'm the way, the truth, and the life. No one comes to the Father but by me. And again, we've got this tendency to make this an exclusive statement, that somehow this is a limiting thing. that you, only if you sign up in this particular way do you come to the Father. Only if you subscribe, as it were, in this particular way. And again, if you look for resonances, first of all, the I am the way, the truth, and the life is the most expansive of the I am sayings, the fullest of the I am sayings. But then when you think about who is the me, when he says no one comes to the Father but by me, so the me is the word who is in the beginning, who is created all by whom all things are created. The me is the one who draws all things to himself. And so you once again, I think, have a much more expansive sense of however this happens, he is the one who holds all things together and draws all to himself, and so is the way, however one however one understands that. So it's not just this little group. It's no one comes to the Father but by me, but I am the one who is by whom all things are created. I mean, that's the frame in which I would see that. Does that make am I making sense?
Yep. And so moving further on into the John 14, 1-14, then we come to I am the way, the truth, and the life, which is often used as a kind of stick by some to, in an exclusivist sense. You see, it's only Jesus is the way. And I think the danger of going immediately down that route is we lose some of the heavy irony that John is typically trying to express here. So this is the farewell discourse to his disciples the night before he dies.
Yeah.
So I am the way. You've got to be joking. What? The way of passion and crucifixion and humiliating death. I am the truth, the one who is about to be nailed to the cross by the lies of many people around him. But also this curious notion that the truth is a person, and therefore there's something relational about the truth. I was listening to Ben Witherington the other day on a podcast, and he was talking about understanding truth as relational when he said, for instance, if I was to talk to you about my marriage and tell you the truth of my marriage, I think my wife would probably have something to say. And then when she'd spoken, our children would probably have something to say. In other words, the truth is relational in that sense. You don't come by the truth as a factual thing when you talk about something like marriage. So Jesus is saying something profound here about being in relation to him, to come by that relational truth, which is us in God and God in us. Yeah, I am the way, the truth, and the life. The life is that which appears then to be joining Jesus on the cross in one way or another in order to realize the life that lies the other side of it. So this is kind of deeply layered, isn't it? I am the way, the truth, and the life. And then he has this curious conversation with Philip, who says, show us the Father and we'll be satisfied. Yeah. And some commentators say the issue in John's gospel is believing without seeing. The Johannine community no longer sees, so how can it believe? And
which we get with Thomas, don't we?
Which we get with Thomas at the end, and again we see arising with Philip here. And apparently the Greek that John uses for Jesus saying, he who has seen me has seen the Father, isn't a physical seeing, but is a kind of, now I see, now I get it, now I understand, I behold it. So something here about the nature of how it is we see. And how do we see? Well, we see, first of all, through Jesus himself in the Word. We see through the resurrection. We see through the Spirit that he gives to us. We see through Word and sacrament. And we eventually see through the parousia, the consummation of the kingdom. So in different ways, but this is not a physical seeing.